Today we're here to talk about plagiarism using Dr. Seuss' book as an example. Now the bulk of this presentation was not created by me, so here you have credit for the people who created this presentation and then published it for other instructors to use, but I of course edited it to better suit our purposes. So plagiarism is a problem, and they have a cute little poem here that tries to talk about it, but one thing that I think makes plagiarism a bigger problem is that there are so many ways it can happen, and a lot of students don't realize that all of these different things are plagiarism. So people usually realize, hey, if I submit someone else's work as mine, that's plagiarism. They might not realize that if they are changing keywords and phrases but keeping the original content, that's still plagiarism. Or if they pull a bunch of different pieces of different sources together, hey, I mean, you're still doing work in that case, but you're also not citing the sources correctly, so that would also be considering plagiarism. And this list, if you want to pause and look at it, contains more examples of things that are considered plagiarism. So why do students plagiarize? And of course, one of the reasons is students don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So we try really hard to explain citation and paraphrasing, but it is a bit complicated, so sometimes that doesn't always get through. Students also tend to be insecure sometimes. I have so many students who come up to me and say, I am not a good writer, I'm a terrible writer. And when students feel that way, they may feel like they can't use their own words, they can't use their own writing as much, and turn in something that's quality. So they may feel insecure, and that may cause them to overuse sources or use sources improperly. There are also some cultural differences as to why people plagiarize, or there are cognitive issues. So sometimes students may not feel like what they're doing is wrong, especially in the internet era, where copyright gets a bit hazy, and we're used to, looking on the internet for something and finding it, and not necessarily giving the source credit, or even on the internet, knowing if the source is really the person who made that image or discussion, or if they actually stole it as well. So according to plagiarism.org, they define plagiarism as copying someone else's work or borrowing original ideas. And the authors of this PowerPoint say, well, copying and borrowing are fairly weak words. So we look at Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition, which says to steal and pass off the ideas or words of another as one's own, to use without crediting the source, to commit literary theft, or to present as new and original an idea or product derived from an existing source. And notice the use of the words to steal and theft in here. And a lot of students do bring up that parallel. So I have previously assigned students to write an argument trying to convince someone that they should not plagiarize. And a lot of students said, if you wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't steal someone's writing. Or if you wouldn't steal someone's iPad, then you shouldn't steal someone's writing. And to an extent that's true, but that's really a false analogy if you look at it as a fallacy, because if you take someone's iPad, you are taking something that is value to them. But if you copy an article off the internet, the original person who wrote that doesn't even know. Unless it's your classmate, which is unlikely, then it will have no effect whatsoever on the original person. So plagiarism is not so much an act of theft. I mean, it is, but the problem we have with it really is that it's an act of fraud. So if you only look at plagiarism as theft, if you paid someone for a paper and they said, I give you full rights to use this, you could say, oh, well, I did not steal that. I have every right to use it even though I didn't write it. But the problem for your college classroom is that the important thing is that you're presenting work that's yours. Otherwise, how can you be evaluated, which is what you're paying your instructor to do. So the problem is not just stealing the work, but lying about it afterward. So here we have kind of a division between deliberate plagiarism and accidental plagiarism. So the difference between just copying something from a web page versus trying to paraphrase something but doing it wrong. But I think the important part to think about is the mid-zone there, neglectful plagiarism. So sometimes maybe it's not so much that you truly don't know what you're doing or that you're intentionally trying to misrepresent yourself, but maybe students get in a rush, they don't have time to properly cite their sources, they leave it to the last minute so they're too tired at that point to do it correctly or think about it. Maybe they just don't feel like taking the effort, or they don't know how to figure it out, they don't know where to look, so they just say, okay, I'll just put down what I have and hope it works. So here's again our list of different types of plagiarism, and notice that a lot of these are things that you can do accidentally. So failing to put a quotation in quotation marks, giving incorrect information about the source, changing words but copying the sentence structure. And that's what we're going to talk about here, is how to avoid these examples. Or, for that matter, using so much material from a source, even if it's all credited, that basically what you're turning in is someone else's work. So we're going to use the book Green Eggs and Ham, I know you were waiting for the Dr. Seuss part, to help us understand plagiarism. We're using MLA citation style, and think about these following examples with the premise that your assignment is writing a paper about how people perceive unfamiliar food. So one of our sources is going to be the book Green Eggs and Ham. So for each sentence we're going to pause and say whether this is plagiarism or not. So here's the original book. I do not like them, Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham, which presumably you are all familiar with. So we're writing about this book and we want to write, the main character does not like green eggs and ham. Is this plagiarism? The answer is yes, it is plagiarism, and most students say, well, no, because you're just describing the book. But if you look at the book, the phrase, not like green eggs and ham, was taken directly from the book. It's word for word, and there's no citation. So yes, this is plagiarism. So what if we decide, hey, we're going to put that in quotation marks now. The main character does not like green eggs and ham. Is this plagiarism? Yes, it still is. So remember how we said they copied a phrase and they didn't indicate that it was word for word from the original. And we fixed that. But we also said they need to put a citation, and here there's no reference for a citation. So we said this is a quote from somewhere, but we weren't clear about where that's from. So here we go. The main character does not like green eggs and ham. Now we have our citation. This is from Geisel, page 12, which is Dr. Seuss's real name. Is this plagiarism? Yes, it still is, because obviously we said the last one fixed the quotations but not the citation. In this version, we fixed the citation but we didn't fix the quotation. So we still have a problem. So how about this one, finally? The main character claims he does, quote, not like green eggs and ham, end quote, parenthetical citation, Geisel 12. Is this plagiarism? It is not, okay? We have finally cited this correctly. We have the word-for-word phrase in quotation marks, and we have a correct citation. So let's look at this example. Let's say we're going to change some of the words we don't want to quote extensively. So maybe we write, the main character dislikes green eggs and ham, or green ham and eggs. And we have our citation. Is this plagiarism? It still is, because the words have not been changed adequately to be considered actual paraphrasing. The sentence is very similar to the original quotation, but you can't put it in quotes to save it because it's not the exact words. So let's try something else. The main character has a strong distaste for forest-colored fowl embryos and cured domesticated pig products. Is this plagiarism? Well, we've changed the words and we have our citation, but yes, this is still a problem. So notice that while we've changed a lot of the words, the sentence structure is still very similar to the original quotation. This is sometimes called copy and paste or patch writing. I call it inadequate paraphrasing because I feel like a lot of times when students do this, obviously they're trying to paraphrase the sentence, they just haven't gone far enough. So if you look at the phrases that have been chosen, we've replaced do not like with have a strong distaste, green with forest colored, eggs with fowl embryos, The and is still there, and we've replaced ham with cured domesticated pig products. So this is find and replace, where you're just sort of replacing the terms, or patch writing, where you're just replacing some of the terms with synonyms. Remember that you need to also change the sentence structure. So how about this? Lack of familiarity with particular preparation styles of foods is likely to lead to premature rejection based on ignorance rather than an objective appraisal of the inherent taste qualities of that food. Now that's a mouthful. Is it plagiarism, though? It is not. So we have paraphrased this in a way that represents the message. It changes the words, it changes the structure. We're basically saying what he means rather than what he said. However, as your authors note, this is not particularly readable sentence. Yes, this is reminiscent of a lot of academic writing, but it's not good writing. So how about this simplified version? When something is unfamiliar or foreign to us, we tend not to judge it fairly. Is this plagiarism? It is not. So we have adequate paraphrasing that accurately represents Geisel's message, and that is clear and it's easily understood. Notice also that we don't have the page number here, so you may have noticed on the last two examples that were not considered plagiarism, we only have the author's last name. The reason for that is because in changing the way we paraphrase the work, we've actually basically summarized the whole book, so we're not quoting one specific page anymore. If we're summarizing the entire work, we don't need a page number. So here are references for you. Citation for Green Eggs and Ham, Turnitin's definitions of plagiarism, and definitions of plagiarism from Merriam-Webster and plagiarism.org. So hopefully that helps in seeing some examples of how you can take something from a work that is plagiarism and how you can take something from a work in a way that is fairly represented. Obviously, we'll be talking about this throughout the semester.